Welcome back, everybody, to episode number 39 here in the Systematic Factory. I've been doing a lot of work down here in our geothermal plant slash water treatment facility, I guess you'd call it. The things are going pretty well. I got it all pretty much sorted out. I was just dealing with an issue with heat transferring into these vacuum areas diagonally that I just had to patch up. So now I have diamond tiles in each of the places where I'm trying to inject heat. It used up all the diamond I've made since the last episode, so diamond is not coming by very quickly. But I'm going to briefly show you this, and then we're going to move on to a new project today. But I basically I set up the lines so that the polluted water comes here, salt water comes here. The salt water is limited by these two settings here. So if the pressure here is above 20,000, it doesn't send any salt water in. If the water level here were to hit 500, that means the water has flooded the bottom of this. Something's wrong with the heat, and dumping more salt water in is just going to continue to flood the place. It also won't put any more salt water in. I also have this set up to an alarm, which will tell me place is flooded. That way, if it gets this high, then I know I have to come here and deal with something that's broken. It shouldn't now that I've worked out everything, but it was there as a precaution while I was building everything. So that's how we get those waters in. The system here is still the same. When the pressure's above 20K in this sensor and this sensor, then we send water out through these lines that go up here. Otherwise, we send it back in to keep the pressure in the system high enough to keep everything running and cool. This system here, when the polluted water lands or the salt water lands, we get dirt and salt. So this system is set to very quickly pick it up, throw it into the conveyor loader, which loads it onto this belt here, which comes up here and goes through a cooling system that cools it down to 40 degrees and drops it out up here. So we have lots of stuff up here. We also stacked up a bunch of stuff like the abyssalite and things like that up here, and some that was over temp just because we had to get it out of the system because we had a ton of it from before I installed this system. But this is where everything's going to sit. People can come grab the sand and the salt and the dirt and all the things there. The sand comes from when dirt is sitting here a little too long, right when this door switches on. So that happens when the temperature in this tile falls below 160. It'll inject some heat. If it does that while there's dirt on here, the dirt will turn into a tile because it will quickly go above the 300. I think it's 360 some degrees that dirt changes into a tile. And this robo miner will mine it up, but it turns from dirt to sand when it does that, so we get a little bit of sand that way. So everything seems to be working good. I might do some more changes with this sensor here, but I did shorten it down because we couldn't cool down the 10 steam turbines they had because I wasn't accounting for this steam turbine that also needs to be cooled down. So now we have 8 plus this one, and even though they're running pretty much full bore, all of these are like 100% every cycle. You can see the uptime. It's keeping it nice and cool. Right now we are at 24 degrees in our coolant, and I think it's going down. It's a little higher than it should be because of the issues I was having with the diagonal heating. So this place was overheating to like 400 degrees, and it was not working great. You can see some of these oil reservoirs still have some residual heat from sitting there in that hot steam for a while I fix the problem. This system won't break if it gets too hot. These will still keep running unless it gets to the point where the cooling can't keep these below 100 degrees, and then they stop working. So I did put in this alarm. It's if this tile goes above 300 degrees, it notifies me, so I know to come over here and look to see what the issue is. But I haven't had anything happen since I fixed these diagonal issues I was having. I do have a door here that is just set for nobody to come in, so the biobots can come in here, because a bunch of stuff fell on the ground while I was building. Biobots will come in and grab it if they need it for building. and stuff like that. I doubt they will since I have plenty of it in other places, but they might. Steel supplies are a little bit low, so it's a possibility. Steel production is low right now because of our lime production is low. We're still getting it in, but it takes time, and we've used a lot of steel, so we have plenty of iron to turn into steel. We just don't have the lime that we need. So I might do where is it? Oh, I have cold damage going in over here. I have to look into that. This is the ancient specimens. If you do all those, you can get fossil out of the deal. I guess I could actually just excavate a few of the pieces around while I'm waiting to do it, but that is not my focus today. We're getting distracted. What I'm going to do today is over here on Hazardato, we are going to crack into one of these uranium biomes, and we're going to build a nuclear reactor. And we're going to do it specifically because I want the nuclear waste to use to power a diamond press that will make diamonds much, much faster than the one that we currently have. So there's going to be a lot of work we need to do that. But it just makes sense to do it over here where the source of the uranium is, rather than doing it back on the other base and shipping their uranium over to it. So I'm going to get some work clearing out some space here for it, and I'll get some things built so that we can give this a go. I've never done the nuclear reactor before, so I'm going to be using a guide from GC Fungus's channel where he builds one. He has a couple of different ones. One's that's a simple reactor, one that's a really big reactor. I don't want the big reactor because I've never done it before. I want to do a small one, so I'm going to do that, and hopefully we can do it without blowing the place to heck. So we'll get it all set up, and then I will show you how it's going to work. I had a funny thing happen here, and I wanted to share it with you. I've put in our coolant loop here, and I had it set to -200, just because that's what I had that set at while I was running that loop. And I forgot to switch the gases in here out, so this was filled with oxygen and polluted oxygen, and I accidentally created a liquid oxygen farm. So I have a lot of liquid oxygen down here that's slowly warming up now because I've turned the loop back to 0 degrees, and it is doing its thing here. And I put in a vent to pump out the hydrogen that I want in here, and I'm connecting up these gas pumps to pump out all the other gases and send them on their way. Kind of funny. Liquid oxygen is something that's kind of almost difficult to make in some cases, and I just made it by accident, so interesting. Anyway, on Hazardato, we are working on laying out this reactor setup. So this is, I will try to link the video in the description. If I don't, let me know so that I can do so. But I am laying out all of the buildings first before I do any of the wiring. But basically, we're gonna have a research reactor that we're gonna feed enriched uranium into, and we're gonna have coolant going into it. That will heat it up, and the coolant will heat up into steam, which will get sent down here, and there will be a total of 10 steam turbines that are connected to it, which will cool down the output and feed it back in a loop into the research reactor. And so basically it will be able to run without having a meltdown, which will be good because I don't really want to have a meltdown. We're also going to do some work to, this is from old spot, get rid of this. We're also going to put some shielding on it so that we don't have super large amounts of radiation. But the purpose of this, we'll get a lot of power from it, but the purpose of it is to create nuclear waste so that we can use the radiation from the nuclear waste to create rad bolts that we can use to create diamonds. So this, we just have to finish building this whole layout and get it fit in. It took me a minute to find a spot down here that we could A, fit it in, and B, do it in a place where we weren't going to have to dig through too much of the uranium ore, because I have set up a bee colony over here to handle uranium so that we can get more out of it. I'm still learning how this works, but basically you want to use the beta hive because they harvest uranium ore and then they turn it into enriched uranium at a much higher rate. So if we look at the hive, I don't know if it's going to show us the number. Maybe it will on one of the bees. Maybe not. But when I looked it up on the wiki, you get a lot more if you have the betas harvesting the uranium than if you do, because not only do you lose mass when you mine out the tiles, but you also lose it when you run it through a enrichment uranium centrifuge to enrich it. So this provides us with enriched uranium when we harvest in here, and they collect the uranium, they put it in, and it gives us enriched uranium. When we're done building this, we will have a spot where our duplicants can drop off the enriched uranium, and it will go into our reactor, and it will just be turned into power and steam that is turned into power, and it will be turned into nuclear waste, which we will collect and use to create radiation for our rad bolts. So we just need to get the structure built, and then I'll put in all the steam turbines and our plumbing, and it's a pretty simple design. There's not a ton that can go wrong. I am going to have to connect up a water line from here, which we do have water production on this colony. We won't need to use too much of it because the reactor produces enough steam that it can be turned back into coolant and used to cool down itself, in theory, but we always want to have a constant supply of water to it, because if it gets too hot, it will melt down and explode very violently, and it will break a lot of things. So we're going to hope that we do not do that. So I'm going to get the rest of this stuff built so that we have space to put in all our buildings, get our buildings in, and then we'll run our plumbing and all of our systems so that we can handle the nuclear waste in it, and then we will get started on actually running the thing. Made some good progress here on our research reactor. This design, like I said, is one that I'm copying from GC Fungus. He has gotten this set up based on a post that he got off of Reddit. I'll try to link the video in the description. If I don't, as always, just remind me. I'm making a few changes to it because, and he mentions this in the video, I'm going to be using supercoolant because I'm in the late game and I have it. And so I only need one aqua tuner to keep all the steam turbines cool. But the basic premise here is we have a research reactor that's going to be shielded, and it's going to have uranium loaded into it, enriched uranium, and then it is going to fire up, and it's going to use water for coolant. And we have a line of water from our base to go in to get it started up. We'll leave that attached just so that if there is ever any problem down here where the coolant doesn't go in, it'll keep filling it up. But once this is running, these top steam turbines will always feed water back in, and so the reactor will self-cool itself, basically. The steam will get turned into power, the water will get fed back into the reactor, and it will make more steam, and it'll just keep going with the process. We're going to be using one aqua tuner to do the cooling, like I said, because we're using super coolant. So I'm just working on getting the gases pumped out of here, which is taking a long time because I just have the one pump. I'll probably put a couple more in here, get it to go faster. But I haven't been rushing it because I'm working on other stuff. The other thing we're doing is I need the super coolant. So I set up another little bay here like I did with this one so that I can bring super coolant over and have somewhere to store it. I'm going to put this here as well. That's swept up. So I have basically a line coming in from over here. And just like this one, it's going to be below 900 kilograms. So that way it'll fill up almost the whole way. And then it'll stop. And we'll have access to super coolant here. On the Dampina side, I have... fortunately, I have a coolant line going right next to our teleporter. So I have this line is connected up to here, and this is the line that goes to that. So I'm going to reconnect this Actually, what I should do is do that with a bridge. That way, it doesn't stop the flow unless there's a gap. But I want to connect this up first, and that way when I start pulling coolant off to go to the other side from this loop, I can just dump more coolant in, and that'll be fine. This coolant's pretty cold, and that'll be okay. So we're going to get this bridge put up, and then once we do, I'll connect this coolant line to our teleporter to send it through, and this line will pull supercoolant from our storage and put it back into this to keep things stocked so that this doesn't run empty. And then once we have enough supercoolant on the other side, I can disconnect it and send it back into here, and that will keep us all good over here. So this won't put in supercoolant into the loop unless there's a gap in the loop. So that will work great. Hoping that this person comes and builds this really quick. There we go. So now what we do is we just connect it here. And so now it'll go, it'll keep sending one that way, and that's fine. It'll just send one at a time, every other one this way. We go back to Hazard Auto, and you can see the supercoolant's coming out, and it's going to drop out of here because this isn't filled up. And we can just let that go, and it will just keep giving us supercoolant. And then back over here, when this loop makes it all the way around, and it's a long loop, and gets back to here, when there's a hole in the line, it will just drop another drop of supercoolant in from this side, and that'll keep it so that this stays stable at the 1992 kilograms that are in there, which is fine. So we're just going to let that run for a while so we get a bunch of supercoolant over here. But what we can do now is we can work out our plumbing for our coolant line, and all we need is to have a bridge like that. Let's do ceramic pieces right there. I always like to do ceramic inside because it's good to have them. And then we connect it like this. And then we're going to go up here. I want to check how he did the coolant just to make sure. He just has one row of radiant on each one, which is fine. We're just going to come up to the top all the way. We'll do a radiant section like this. We'll do one like this, like this, like this. If you lay down the radiant sections first and then grab the insulated, then when you get to the edge, it doesn't overwrite the insulated, which makes it so that you can be, you can just lay the things without having to worry about overwriting them. Of course, you have to be quick enough that you don't end up having them finish building them before you get to it. But that's okay. I can always pause if I need to. So that's done. That's done. And then from there, we'll just come back down like this. And we'll go in like that. So then the last thing we need is a thermosensor here. And an automation wire to connect here. The power, we have a power line that goes to this and the pump, and it's connected to this, which is on this grid. And this grid also has power that goes up to the auto sweeper, and the conveyor loader is connected on the main wire. So when we get to it, and I'm just working out all the spots here, we're going to run a wire like this and up here, and we'll eventually replace that section of wire when they deconstruct the one under the bridge. And then we'll have it connected. All we have to do is connect there, and it will start the auto sweeper up and the conveyor loader up. So what we want here is we're going to set this to be enriched uranium. And so we're going to set this to allow manual use, and we'll set this, let's just do 7, a higher priority. So now the duplicants will put that in, and when the power's on, it will drop it off in here. This auto sweeper will have power, and it will put the enriched uranium in the reactor, turning it on. And basically all the enriched uranium we have on the map will just get dumped into here. And once we deconstruct this tile and clean this out, we will remove this ladder and put a mesh tile there. That way this reactor room is inaccessible, and that means that the enriched uranium here, they won't be able to grab and put back into the conveyor loader. So it'll be all contained. So any enriched uranium we get will get loaded in here. It'll keep bringing us more, and it will keep this thing fueled. And the coolant will keep itself covered. We just have to finish a few more pipes for that. We need to get all the gases out of here. Like I said, I'm probably going to throw a few more gas pumps in just to get this quicker. Though we're really close to being cleaned out on gases. It's just trickling away. And then we need to work out the system for pumping out here. So we need a hydro sensor right here. And it's basically going to say if this goes over a certain amount of waste, then we'll pump it out. Then we'll have to determine where we want to put it, but basically we're going to have that waste pumped out and put into a infinite storage so that it will stack on top of each other and create a large amount of radiation in a very tight space. So we need to get that section built, but I have to decide where I'm going to put it because I need to have somewhere where I can put down our diamond press, and that means building like an industrial block on this side of the teleporter. I haven't built one because I didn't have a super large amount of power, but once we have this running, we'll have much more power on this side, and it should be perfectly fine. So a few more things to work out. I think we'll probably put an industrial brick, just a little one down here. I'm not going to do full-scale stuff over here, so it's not necessary to have a really large one. I just want to have a few steam turbines to pull off the heat and set that up, and we'll feed the nuclear waste in there so that we can do it. I did open up this one as well. Because all of our duplicates are in Atmos suits, I'm fine with them just being open and bees flying out and doing their thing. Because they can't get into the base where they don't have suits. So they should be fine. Unless I am mistaken how that works. And then we'll find out about that. So, we did finish one other achievement while we were working on this. And so I'll show you that. We got the radical trip. Because our other rad bolt system pushed us over the 10 kilometer mark. But once we get this done, we'll go way over it. Because we're going to be sending out rad bolts like crazy. Everything is built now, and I put in a few more gas pumps to pump out all the gases. I also broke open some tiles so I could pump out all the gas everywhere, because I want to get this area around the steam turbines empty so I can put some hydrogen in. I also built an exterior shell because I'm slowly removing the gas from this colony as well, and I want this to be contained. I put in an entry up here and one down here. This will let me get into the steam chamber. This will let me get into the hydrogen chamber for the steam turbine. Everything is prepped. I have super coolant that's running through. Once we have power, that'll start cooling. Once we connect power, the uranium will go in and the water will flow in. Though I do have to fix some pipes here because they're frozen. I noticed an issue I had in here that my tamer wasn't working because the conveyor rail had gotten filled up with things that were too small to actually cool down, and it had jammed everything up. And I have a couple 100 tons of gold sitting in there that I didn't pull out. I didn't notice because I still have a couple 100 tons that I did pull out already, so it's not a big deal, but I'm going to have to revisit that design and come up with a way to fix that in the future. But for now, to fix it, all I did is I switched this to drop off everything. I just made it like above 0 or below 0, whatever I had to do to get it so that everything fell off the line. And it was such small amounts that it didn't cause any problems with heat. And I'll have to check the other ones to see if they're doing that. But I disconnected the power to that because I'm using it down here to run these pumps. So we're pretty much just waiting for all of this gas to get out. And while we're doing that, I set up a little section here. I just have a electrolyzer, 2 gas pumps, and a liquid lock. This has water running into it, so when I give this power, it'll start producing hydrogen and oxygen, and I'm bridging it onto our line here. So I'm going to disconnect this, and then I'm going to connect this power. And so it's going to produce hydrogen and oxygen, and I'm not worrying about sorting which one, because it's just going to go down here into our sorter, which is fine. Oxygen can go into our base, because the loop has space for that to do that. And the hydrogen will get put into storage. And the reason I am doing that is once we have it stored in here and we get all the gases out of here, I can use these lines to put in a vent to put hydrogen back into here once we have it all closed up. So I'm going to let all the gases in here get pumped out. Once they're gone, the hydrogen that we're making will get a couple of tanks stored up, and then we'll be able to send that hydrogen back to our reactor after that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the vent here, and so that way, in case I'm not paying attention and this hydrogen gets to the point where it's full, I don't want to start venting hydrogen. This will all back up, which means this will shut down and we'll be good to go. I might consider setting this up permanently just so that it can provide the oxygen for us rather than pulling oxygen from the other colony, just because I can, but I don't know about how my water is going to hold up, so we'll see. It's more important that I have the water for our nuclear reactor, but everything else here is ready except that I have to worry about these pipes. The pipes are cracking because their water is just sitting in them and they're cold. Looks like this one cracked inside the shielding here. I'll have to go in and fix that. Once we have the reactor up and running, I can do something about bringing the heat out to put it somewhere else. I put this here to drop off all the solid nuclear waste into a pile down here. I want to sweep that, sweep this. And the reason for that is that if I sweep any nuclear waste, I want it to go in here because that solid nuclear waste, do I have any here that I can look at it? Yes. It will melt at 26 degrees. It's going to be a lot more than 26 degrees in here, and it'll just add into our liquid nuclear waste. So that's a way just for me to get rid of it. That way, while I'm working around the map, there's a bunch of stuff. When I'm sweeping areas, instead of them sending it up to be stored up in our storage up here, we can get it to go down there. In fact, if I don't know if I'm going to be able to selectively pick there's some solid nuclear waste. We can sweep that, and that'll get picked up and brought down here. The goal is just to get it so all our nuclear waste is in one spot. I still need to put in the line for that so that we can start pumping the nuclear waste out, but I'm just going to wait until we're done with everything else. I also have to deal with this extra petroleum issue that I have here. I was dumping the petroleum I had for a lockdown here that I switched to supercoolant into this loop, and I made it too big, so we didn't have quite enough. I'm going to have to pull some of this petroleum out and send it back up to storage or do something with it. I'll probably actually just feed it into our generators because I need to get rid of it. I wouldn't mind switching this loop over to supercoolant as well, just to make it more efficient. A lot of things to do, but mostly I just want to wait on getting this finished up so that we can fire it up. Finished getting all the gases pulled out, and I'm putting hydrogen back into our steam turbine room so that we can keep some temperature maintained in there. I did set up the electrolyzer room, and I've been just pumping hydrogen in. I'm going to leave it running for a while until we get, solid amount of hydrogen filling this whole system. Even a little bit will be enough for us to fire things up. We're just getting the little finishing touches on here. I'm sweeping things out, but we can do that while we have this thing running. I am ready to give it its first test. So the water's already running. The enriched uranium is in the chamber ready to get injected in. Basically, it'll flow through here to get dropped down, and as soon as this has power, it will pick it up and put it in. So that will turn everything on. I set up a system here to store the nuclear waste. This will only send it out when it's above 500 kilograms. Actually, I'm going to make that 250. That way it doesn't get up too high. I think, so we're using super coolant. Let's just go to 0 degrees. We'll keep them cold, but we won't keep them too cold. It'll be fine. I think that everything is good. We have everything done. I'm just doing some double checks. These 4, oh, we don't have a vent on these 4 steam turbines, so we need to do a plumbing, a steel vent, and we will just put it right here. That way they can vent out back into the system. These 4 will go through here. If there's empty space in this line, it will go up that way first, and if not, it'll go to the vent. Same with these 2, they'll go here, they'll try to go across the bridge first, and once this is filled, then they will go to the vent. That way we can keep the reactor full with coolant, but then we can put all the excess water back into the system here, and I think it should be good. I don't think I'm missing anything. If we are, then we'll blow things up. I am building a line over here just to be able to move some petroleum over. Once we get this filled, where all 4 tiles have nuclear waste in, we're just going to drop a blob of petroleum right on top, and then we'll close this off, and then that's what's going to work here. The 4 tiles of nuclear waste will be stacked, and the more you put in there, the stronger the radiation will get, and then these 2 rad bolt generators will pull it and shoot it out. We'll have to get that set up so that they reflect somewhere useful once we do, but for now, let's cut off the power to those, just so that they're not running until we get it starting to go. Okay, I think everything is good. So to turn this thing on, all I have to do is connect our power wire here so that we're on the grid. That means that everything now has power. There we go. We got our first enriched uranium going in. So this reactor now has water, it has enriched uranium, and it has nuclear waste coming out. Let's see how this goes. There we go, we have steam forming. Steam's getting picked up by these turbines. There, it's putting the wastewater back out. This is still pumping in plenty of water. Keep this thing going. Until it gets to the point where the steam is condensed through the whole system, we need water coming in from our water source. Once it gets condensed and the steam is filling the whole room, then it should stop pulling in water, and it should power itself. Are we getting nuclear waste down here? We are. So that's coming down, and we're starting to get some nuclear waste dropped to the bottom. And it's pretty hot, so this solid nuclear waste will soon get hit by that. We'll probably get a big flash of nuclear waste here. I'm hoping it's not too much to cause any problems. I don't think I put too much down here. I might have. That might be too much. Let's see. I want to just check our gas overlay. You can see how the steam is going. We need to get the steam filling in the whole place and get it nice and hot. But this will get hotter and hotter as it goes. Nuclear waste is now up to 340 degrees. Going well. Nothing too bad now. Oh, here's a problem. We have ice up here because it's too cold inside the system. But it'll turn back into water as the thing heats up. We're getting hot stuff going through here. It's just, we're starting off in a very, very cold space, so I think it's going to take a while for everything to heat up in here. So I'm going to let this run for a while, and then I'll come back once it's running properly, or once it's ready to explode. We'll see what happens. Gotta say, this is a lot easier than I expected it to be. Having never built a nuclear reactor in Oceania before, I thought this would be really difficult. And granted, I'm using a design that I got from somebody else, but basically the concept is very simple. The reactor needs to make sure it stays below a certain temperature, so you have to make sure the coolant doesn't get interrupted. And now that we have these running, that's being done. We're pulling a little tiny bit of water here, but I don't think that I don't think we would need it. I think this is now supporting itself. It might, if we cut this off, it would probably completely support itself, and we'd have no water coming out of the top ones there. But it's doing fine. It's still heating up because it was really cold in here when we started. You can see the temperatures are good. And if we look at the relative temperatures, this is based on 200 degrees, so steam above 200 degrees is too hot for the turbines to handle, but they can still go after that. And some of this is a little too cold still. Steam. It's 200 there, 200 there. We're getting it to be working efficiently. The liquid nuclear waste is piling up down here. Set this to 250. I'm gonna actually set it up to 500 now. Now that I have everything done, I just wanted to get it moving. And I set this to 35 because that's what the guide had, and I was like, that's fine. We just need these to stay cooler than that. We gotta watch to make sure these don't get too hot. Gotta make sure that this loop is working. I think it should be fine. It should stay in the range. Like I said, they're a little bit hotter down here. So I just gotta keep an eye on that. The problem with the reactor is that if it runs out of coolant, it will heat up and it will melt down. And that'll cause a lot of problems for us. But we've gotten, at least started to get what we want out of this. So when we look here at this radiation, this is what we're aiming for. This system is pretty simple. It is a airflow tile system so that it locks in the things. I put some lead tiles around to block some of the radiation around it. But the airflow tiles prevent this from overpressurizing, so we can just keep dumping nuclear waste in here. So this will just keep getting more and more and more radiation. So the rad bolt generators behind it will handle the radiation from it. I have a automation wire in it, so all we have to do is connect it and turn it on for it to work, and it'll shoot rad bolts out the corners here and here. And we can reflect them into what we want. And we'll build a diamond press in the next episode with that. But there's just a tiny little bit of petroleum up at the top, which makes it so when the nuclear waste comes in, it can't occupy that tile, so it drops down, and it keeps filling up this infinitely. We also got on our colony achievements the That's Rad achievement, because we ran the research reactor at full capacity for 5 cycles, which is pretty cool. So now really we have just these 4 DLC achievements and the main achievements to get finished. And then we'd be done with all of our achievements. Pretty fancy. So this will allow us, as we keep going, it's giving off radiation. You can see it's pretty intense already, but as we keep dumping more and more nuclear waste in there, it's going to keep getting more and more intense. This is fairly safe. I might try to do another layer of shielding on these, because I could fit it in, because I could put ladders up like this. At least I could put some in. I could put it on this side, maybe across the top. I'd probably have to make this room bigger and fit it in. I don't think it's that big of a deal. We don't have huge amounts of radiation coming out, so it should be fine. Of course, the autosave's here right as I'm trying to finish everything up, but this should run for forever because it's going to be self-powered with the coolant. So as long as we keep putting uranium in here, and it can keep fueling it, it will keep running. And as far as I understand it, if we run out of fuel, then it'll just cool down and it will just go back into not working. But if it gets too hot, then that's where we have a problem. One thing I find really funny is that there's this tiny little piece of ice here, and that's because it's so small that it can't exchange heat. And so it's just sitting there. It'll probably be there forever. Just, you know, a little tiny piece of ice in front of the, you know, several 100-degree reactor. What's the temperature of the reactor right now? 105 degrees, but the ice is just gonna sit there forever. So yeah, pretty simple design. I will link the design I followed for it. Pretty crazy. There is also another version that uses more turbines, so that because you can get more power out of it, and it does it by limiting the amount of water going in, so that you can get temperature hotter to the point where the waste coming out is just a little bit hotter. And it generates a lot more power, but like you're pushing the reactor right to the borderline of being a meltdown state. I didn't feel the need to do that, mostly because I don't think I need that much radiation. This is going to be more than enough. This is going to keep building up, and then we'll be able to send off an infinite amount of rad bolts into our diamond press and get tons and tons of diamonds. In the next episode, we're going to have to set up shifting refined carbon over to this base, setting up a diamond press and making diamonds, and then shipping the diamonds back. Shouldn't be too difficult, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to use those diamonds for mining in POIs. We're also going to use it to finish up our monument. I don't think that we've made enough diamond in this fashion to do that. We have 1,500. So another 1,000 we would have been able to do this. I might try to do that just to get this done in the old-fashioned diamond press way, just to see. And then getting large amounts of diamonds going will be really nice because, like I said, if we do decide we want to keep pushing on to get to all of the other achievements in the DLC, then it's going to require us to go mine for a million kilograms from space POIs, and we only get 20,000 each time. So that's 500 trips to the wait, is that 500 or is that 50? 20,000 times 5 is 100,000 times 50 would be 1 million. So that's not as bad as I thought. So that's probably doable. We can also use that radiation that we're creating to set up a system here to mutate some plants. Yeah, we could conceivably finish all the achievements, including the DLCs. Wouldn't be too difficult. But anyway, next episode we'll do the diamond press, and we'll start doing some mining, and we'll go from there. This one's going to be a bit longer than normal, as I've been rambling on, and I just wanted to fit all the stuff about the reactor into one episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.